Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming your way with the market recap for the 11th of January. It is a Friday. If you are strapped for time today, long story short, not a whole lot happened from a broad market perspective. We continue to hover just below 2,600 on the S&P. Very, very little price movement across the board here today in the market overall. Looking ahead to next week quickly before we dive into the price action or maybe lack thereof today. We are moving into earnings season. Going into next week, we're going to start to see these big name companies coming out with earnings around 40, give or take. I think there's a couple less, high 30s earning reports on the docket for the S&P 500 companies here next week. In particular, next week's going to be really heavy on the financial side of things. JP Morgan, Bank of America, Citigroup will get the party started before the market opens on Monday. So we are going to see plenty of the big name financials, but we've got some Netflixes in there as well. So United Health, another one coming out next week. So next week, relatively speaking, light. I mean, 40 or approximately 40 S&P companies is a nice dip from where we've been over the last month. But really, that's kind of the light one, right? We'll start to see a lot of earnings in the weeks to follow as well. So it'll be very interesting to see how that impacts the market. Certainly make sure you are staying on top of that for all of your trades. I know I don't need to tell you guys that, but I always will anyway. So hope everybody had a great day trading. And yeah, boring day in the market. Much like we see, I've seen several times this week, in particular yesterday. Today really does kind of look a lot like yesterday. We did gap a little bit, nothing dramatic, but a little bit of gap down on the opening, on the cash open, caught our footing and just kind of drifted up the rest of the day. No real dramatic movement, working our way up and closing near the highs of the day from a broad market point of view, certainly on the S&P 500. Really not a lot has changed, from a purely technical point of view. All of those big numbers that we've been eyeballing the last couple of days, they're still very much in play, closing just shy of 2,600 once again over in the S&P 500. So, if we were wanting the clarity today, we're not going to get it. But that's okay. That's all right. We can move into next week. So really not a whole lot that has changed technically across the board. We did see, the same situation develop over in the NASDAQ. Yesterday, we, I think, closed, just 1620 or 6620-ish. Today, right around 66. So again, we're still using those same numbers, those same resistance zones. Over in the Dow Jones, same song, different index, closing just right below 24,000, that old support zone. And certainly that nice round number. So, as you kind of think about the indexes on a positive note, this is an area that clearly bulls were afraid of, right? Bulls weren't really jumping in to buy at these prices. But on the other side, where are the bears? Right? Where are the bears? Why aren't they selling at these prices? So I guess it depends on how you want to look at it. We have been able to hold up at resistance. We've not been able to break through it. So very, very little movement the last couple of days as we challenge these levels. Lastly, over in the Russell, closing just below 1450. That's going to line us up with that old support zone, with that 50-period moving average. So again, as Matt says from time to time, kind of a nothing burger today. So it really was, on a broad market level, very dull day in the market, and that's okay. That's okay. As we kind of shift gears into the sectors, to nobody's surprise, for the most part, we're going to see very, very similar situations developing over there, over in the material sector. Just another day hovering right below that 50-period moving average. Looks like it's using that as a little bit of intraday resistance right now. Maybe not a substantial level of resistance, but certainly we are seeing it play a little bit of a role here right now. Again, really our major areas, we have a little room to go until we work into this old support zone, which is going to line up pretty nicely with our downward trend line. So we do have a little more room still over there. It does look like, probably are going to need the market to break those resistance levels to get it. But hey, we'll have to see how that goes, right? So not a lot going on over in the material sector here today. Ditto in the energy sector. We know that we are at, while not a lot of tests at that 62 support zone, a very, very big turnaround point on back in the day. We continue to now, we are 3 days into just hanging out at that resistance level. Very undecided. So still no sell signals. If we are looking for bearish trades from a broad market point of view, we're not seeing those signals, at least just yet. But we are at these resistance zones, which means either in the not too distant future, we're either going to push through those zones, giving us a few more buy signals, or we're going to see some downward movement as traders give up, seeing some sell signals. Just aren't going to get it today is all. So really not a lot over in energy has changed. Again, same situation over in the financials. Interestingly, and we've looked at this together, a few times, they have some room, to that next real level of resistance. They're starting to build, looking at an hourly chart, they're starting to build into a little bit of a sideways development, right? Kind of using an hourly 200 as a resistance currently. If we were able to break through this, and again, it might very well take a broad market break to get these any type of breaks that we may be looking for. We know that there's not a lot between 24 approximately and 25, but we've really just consolidated for much of this week. If we're able to break through that, that should give us a little push to work towards that $25 mark. Again, that's an if, and we certainly will very likely need the market to show some strength for that to happen. But we really have developed a pretty clear intraday sideways channel over in the financial sector throughout the course of the week. Over in the industrial sector, not much else to say. Same general ballpark for our close. Again, it does have a fair amount of overhead. Not that most things don't, but certainly it's very easy to see when you look at the industrial. We're dealing with an old support zone as a resistance zone currently. We've got a flattening out 50-period moving average, has gone from being, downward sloping into pretty flatlining for the time being. We've got another level of support. So we've got lots of layers still on top of us, but we are continuing to maintain that overall bullish momentum in the industrial sector as well. So much like the overall market, holding its own. Over in tech, same deal. All right, same deal, continue to consolidate just below this previous pivot, this last swing low. It is developing into a little bit of resistance for sure. If we can take that out, and again, very likely going to take the market moving to see this happen. Not a lot until we work into this downward trend line. That will be something I think we want to keep an eye out for. If we're able to take out this little level that we're dealing with right now, really not a lot in the way until we get to that price and to that price point. So again, I told you, if you're strapped for time today, it's not very interesting. And I was not bluffing. That's for sure. Over in the staples department, again, very, very similar. We do continue to hold that recent break, consolidating, near the tops here. If we do take out these highs, that would be a little bit of a buy signal. But as I've said, for me, at least personally, I need to see it take out that 52 before I'm really on board with that, at least from an overall sector point of view. So still just no clarity at all here today. If that's what we were hoping Friday was going to give us, we're going to go to bed disappointed, right? So over in the utilities, we did briefly stick our nose above that previous swing here yesterday, closing a hair above that resistance level. Really didn't carry over any momentum and kind of closing, as we've seen so many times over the last several months. Utilities just have always seemed, not always, but often seem to have a hard time with follow through these days, right? We watched it back here waiting for it to break out of that 55 zone. It would break one day, but carry no momentum the next day, closing right below that resistance. We saw a repeat of that performance here today. So I still think we're looking at the utility sector overall from a sideways point of view. At least that certainly is how I am looking at that sector currently. Now, over in healthcare, not much, but we were up a whole 1/3% today in healthcare. So, and I guess by today's, the day standards, that was one of our big movers. We continue to hang right around that 200 period moving average, which is pretty flat, no doubt about that. Next real level is still about, $1 away at $89. Continue to see the same things that we've been seeing broadly and certainly over the last little bit in the healthcare sector. We've created that higher low, we've created that higher high. Just again, it's looking like across the board, as you can see, we're going to need this market to make up its mind. If nothing else, pull back and take another run at it. We can't just hang out there forever because nothing wants to move. Nobody wants to be the first one to buy at those major points, and I don't blame them. I don't want to be the first one to buy there either. Over in the discretionary, we continue to hang around that downward trend line. Not really any confirmation one way or another just yet over in the discretionary sector. At least in my opinion, a clear to identify resistance trend line that we are currently working with over in the discretionary. Real estate able to carry on a little bit of yesterday's momentum. Yesterday we had that nice move off of the break from a few days prior. We are working into a level of resistance. I don't know how much you're going to consider it. The big thing for me is how big the break was. We did pull back to it, we did rally up off of it, so this clearly wasn't a support zone and of course a breakdown point, but it was a very short term developing one, right? We don't have a ton of history at this price. I do think we want to keep an eye on that. Whether we think it's a brick wall that we can't work through, I don't necessarily think that myself, but I do think it's worth keeping an eye on from a technical point of view. Beyond that, some flat moving averages, very flat. We noted this the other day, flat 50 on top of a flat 200. Kind of odd looking. You don't see that a whole heck of a lot, but that is what we're dealing with right now. Still some room, but just little layers, an old support level, a flat 200 into the flat 50 period moving average. So continue to hold on to that momentum. Still no sell signals if that is what you were looking for, at least broadly speaking. And lastly, over in communication services, much like the last couple of days, we were holding the break of the 50, but we're not doing anything about it. All right, so we are holding it on a positive note. On a negative note, or at least if you're a bull, or even if you're a bear, unless you're playing theta, nothing's happening, right? We pushed through that 50, which doesn't happen a lot with this sector, and we've definitely closed above it for 4 trading days in a row. My thoughts are, folks are probably watching this trend line. I know I am watching this trend line. It's hard for me to get excited about that break of the 50 period moving average, just knowing the history of the sector. So certainly not a lot has changed over there. So, once again, sometimes you just get a boring day in the market. And I think by anybody's standards, at least when you're talking about stocks, this was a pretty dull day in the market. A good day for theta, right? So as we continue to just hang around, the volatility index does continue to drop. Again, that's not uncommon. That's not shocking, or at least it shouldn't be. That is typically how it operates. Bulls are still in control. Bears have yet to take any control away from them. And so, of course, the volatility, is working its way down. As I've said several times before, and I'll probably say again on Monday, it's that next swing. I'm not personally ready to say that we're done with the volatile market. I kind of want to be, but I'm going to need to see that profit taking wherever it ultimately does occur. Personally, a little bit of a rally over in the dollar. I do think, it is a rally. I think as long as we're below 96, we have to look at this with at least a slightly bearish bias. You don't have to be a super bear by any means, but I do think you have to have a little bit of a bearish bias as long as we are below 96. That's been a big number, right, over the last little while. So a little bit of a rally, interesting to see how it performs, but really not a lot has changed. Still in that overall downward move, a little bit of a bearish bias, at least in the short term. I think as you look at the chart over on the dollar. Looking at the metals markets, gold, we had a rally and then we did kind of sell off. So there was some intraday activity, the last 24 hours on gold, where we had a nice, pop up, pull back, double top, break down. So we did see some selling for much of the day over in gold. But when you think about it, off of the intraday and just more big picture, once again, really nothing has changed, right? We're continuing to hold that upward movement. We're continuing to hold 1280 as our primary short-term level of support. We've got a lot of overhead at 13 or approximately 13. So really not a lot changing over there either. Same song and dance with silver. We did see a lot of selling throughout the course of the day, but really nothing to violate any of our trends or any of our technical signals, at least in my mind. So we continue to just hold our own, consolidate. We had some pretty fast runs over in the metal market, and it was a good time for those of us who were bullish, I'm sure, but you can't go straight up, right? And taking 5, doing a little consolidation while we're trying to figure out that next move, perfectly normal and acceptable thing to do. We did see some movement in natural gas. This is the one area, energy, we saw a few things develop. We were able to clearly take out that little, and I'm, didn't want to see this really. I wanted to see it consolidate a little longer, but we were able to clearly take out that little short-term consolidation that we've watched develop on the intraday. Unlike yesterday, where we took it out for 1 hour and where it didn't have any carry through, immediately sold off the next hour, we were able to carry through a little bit here today. So definitely a nice move up over 6% on the trading day. Certainly worth some intraday signals if that is your thing. We still have lots of levels to deal with right now, but we are seeing some upward movement. We have seen it break some at least intraday resistance. I don't think we can call them strong technical buy signals just yet. I know I certainly am not comfortable saying that, but it is a step. Like I said, I was hoping it was going to consolidate for a little longer. I definitely want to see it have a reasonable open one way or the other without a tremendous gap. And so I'll be interested to see how it opens going into next week. Won't matter, to me, I won't be doing anything with it, but I am certainly interested in doing that. If we can carry this momentum, maybe we are able to at least work back up into this old resistance level, this breakdown point. It was both, right? It was just unfortunately hard to trade because we gapped when we broke above it, we gapped when we broke below it. And so, let's see if that, happens again. I hope not, but if we are able to work our way into that next week, maybe there is a little more room for some price appreciation in the short term over on natural gas. Again, the open's going to matter. If we gap down, we're not even going to have that debate, right? And we have been gapping down on the open as of late over in natural gas. And lastly, over in the crude market, starting to see some sell signals. We did see some downward movement, down over 1%. We briefly tried to push through that 50-period moving average, failed that, and sold off fairly, not dramatically, but we did sell off of it. When you look at some shorter term time frames, this is our 15-minute time frame on the crude. So while we've been watching this rally to the upside, we've really been very consistent of not breaking support or anything like that, staying above some of these shorter term intraday moving averages. Here today, we've kind of pulled back down. We created, bounced off of support, rallied up, made a lower high, and then by breaking down right here, took out support, broke and made a lower low. Again, this is just on a 15-minute time frame, so I don't want to go crazy here, but we are seeing at least a little bit of short-term shifting in momentum away from the bulls into the bears. I don't think it's enough confirmation for swing trade personally, but again, that's my own personal trading rules. Looking at an hourly chart, those of you who know Coach Mark know he loves his hourly charts. He loves his moving averages. For the first time in quite some time, we've closed below the 9, the 20, and the 50 period. Again, is that a sell signal? That's probably up to you to decide. We are at at an hourly support zone. We are seeing a little bit of a shift in the momentum. Now, in my opinion, I don't really, unless I'm playing some intraday stuff, I think the way I'm going to be looking at it is, let's see the test of 50. 50 is a big round number. It was people really bought in once we broke 50. And I would like to see how traders respond if we get back to that price. So, I would understand if somebody decided to go bearish, if they get some signals early next week in crude. I think for myself, as long as it's above 50, I would lean to not doing anything about any sell signals that I see. So maybe I'm right to feel that way. Maybe I'm wrong, but I certainly am a wimp. And so that will probably be how I go about it going into early next week. So a little bit of, ongoings over in the energy, nothing super dramatic, but we, saw a little bit of momentum develop to the bullish side on natural gas, a little momentum develop to the bearish side over in crude oil. Enough to trade? Well, I guess that's up to you. In my opinion, no, at least from a swing trading point of view, but that is just in my opinion, right? And that's all I can work with. So ladies and gentlemen, for the first time, we're done with our market recap early on a Friday because it was just one of those days. Not a whole lot to see here as you're going in and preparing for next week. My advice would probably be the same as it always would be. We are at resistance. So if we see some selling, hey, maybe we give up on Monday. Find some, candidates for a bearish watch list, but we might break the other way too, right? We're not going to stay doing nothing forever. I don't know how long it can last. I don't expect it to last through next week. It may or may not. So I think it's a good idea to find some bullish candidates as well. That way, whatever the market decides to do when it decides to stop doing nothing, like we've kind of done over the last couple of trading days, we've got options, right? Don't have to rush into anything either way. Never should always be following our trading rules. But having, bullish and bearish trading candidates is always a good idea. But when you're right at a major resistance level, it's a really good idea, right? Sooner or later, we're breaking up or we're selling off. And that's just a matter of when, right? We're not going to spend the rest of our days together on the market recap saying S&P is just hanging out below 2,600 again, right? Thank goodness, they're boring days. So be prepared on both sides. Make sure you are double checking those earnings dates. You just want to make sure that anything that you're doing, you've got a plan for the earnings announcement, whatever that plan may be. It's up, of course, your call. I just always want to be the one making the call. Make sure you're getting through the newsletter and those reports this weekend. We'll get them delivered to you here tomorrow. Hopefully some good watch lists. I'll head over as soon as I'm done with you guys and join the other coaches in our scouting report meeting. So make sure you're getting through those watch lists, getting through those reports, double checking those earnings. But as always, make sure you're spending some quality time with the people you love, doing the things that you love. It's the weekend after all, so do enjoy time with friends and family as well. But that's going to do the market recap for today and for the week. It kind of came to there were no fireworks to end this week. That's for sure. But that's okay. All of the trade setups we were looking at yesterday are probably looking awful similar here today. So that's a good thing. As always, ladies and gentlemen, it's certainly my pleasure, and I do appreciate everybody's time. Be sure, if you're new around here, to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. And if you do the Twitter thing, head on over to @TackleTrading on Twitter and join us over there, so we can kind of show you the interesting things we're running into throughout the day in the market. If you enjoy the market recap, it is always helpful and appreciated if you do give it a thumbs up, just so we know it's on the right track, and YouTube knows that it's on the right track as well. With that, ladies and gentlemen, you guys are like me. You're so quiet today. There's not a lot to say on a day like this, right? But it's always great to see you guys, and I always appreciate you joining me here live or on the recording. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, you guys have a wonderful weekend. Get out of here. Happy trading, and I will see you all on Monday.